If Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't the lone assassin, who else had the means, the motive, and the skill to murder the president in a moving open limousine and get away with it?
Gentlemen, we have a bulletin coming in.
The President of the United States is dead.
The first thing Robert Kennedy did when he heard that his brother was killed was call the White House and secure his files.
They don't want Johnson or Hoover getting those files. RFK did not trust Lyndon Johnson, hated him.
Bill O'Reilly, best-selling author of Killing Kennedy.
They had been taught that by their father. It was always protect the family.
Who killed the president? We don't know.
Mark Lane was one of the first to question the government's findings that Oswald was the lone assassin.
It was resolved by blaming it on Oswald and having Oswald killed. No trial.
More than 40 years ago, Lane published his book Rush to Judgment in England. American publishers would not touch it.
They'd all been contacted by the Central Intelligence Agency. We found that out later.
50 years later, a clear majority of Americans don't believe the Warren Commission's lone gunman conclusion. Lyndon Johnson formed a presidential panel to control the investigation. He had to persuade the Chief Justice Earl Warren to hear it.
When Earl Warren was brought into Lyndon Johnson's office, he left in tears because he knew the burden that had been put on his shoulders.
We've got to take this out of the arena where they're testifying that Khrushchev and Castro did this and did that and kicking us into a war that can kill 40 million Americans in an hour.
If Oswald was not proven to be a lone nut quickly, then World War III might break out because the trail might point toward Cuba and ultimately Russia.
The commission was supposed to investigate the assassination.
The Warren Commission, in the end, just flat-ass lied to us.
Gary Cornwell was Deputy Chief Counsel of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. This group reopened Kennedy's case in 1977 to see if there was a conspiracy.
They never intended to investigate.
Assistant Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach feared Lyndon Johnson might be accused of killing Kennedy.
In that memo that Katzenbach wrote to Bill Moyers, who was President Johnson's White House assistant, they wanted a blue ribbon panel of highly respected people to convince the American public that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole assassin.
You have 50 years later people who still have doubts about the assassination. Why do you believe those doubts still linger?
Because there wasn't a clean investigation. And I have some unanswered questions, but there's no doubt that Oswald killed him. He was such a shadowy, crazy guy that he could have had Confederates that were helping him in some way. That's possible.
J. Edgar Hoover had a special agent in Dallas. James Hosty was his name. Did the FBI, did they drop the ball in their tagging of Oswald?
The FBI was watching Oswald, but they never really took him seriously as a physical threat.
Early October, James Hosty from the FBI came out, left his card and visited, and came out a second time as well. I gave the card to Oswald when he came out on the weekend. My feeling was, sure, the FBI is going to want to know where he is. He's been to the Soviet Union, he's been back, the Cold War is in full tilt.
2 weeks before the assassination, Oswald left a letter for James Hosty in the Dallas FBI office. After Oswald was killed, Hosty said he destroyed the letter. But that wasn't known until 20 years later. Did the FBI mislead the Warren Commission by withholding evidence from it?
Most people heard 3 shots. 3 empty shells were found in the sniper's nest in the depository.
Gary Mack, the 6th floor museum curator.
Most investigators were convinced there were just 3 shots, even though some people heard more.
I believe when James Tagg indicated that he had possibly been a victim of a bullet or bullet fragment, the Warren Commission had a bit of a problem.
Forensic scientist Douglas Schaefer has worked in government crime labs, including the Secret Service.
They no longer had 3 shots that hit 3 targets in the limousine.
The commission's revised conclusion was the single bullet theory, one bullet that wounded both President Kennedy and Governor Connally before the fatal shot to Kennedy's head.
All of the things that should be done in a homicide case were never done by the Warren Commission. If it was a conspiracy, they would do whatever the minimal investigation they thought was required to drop it.
15 years after the Warren Commission, the HSCA concluded the assassination was probably the result of a conspiracy, partially based on controversial acoustics testing. that proposed a second shooter was behind the grassy knoll.
We know there are two shooters. We know there was a conspiracy of some sort.
But if Oswald did not act alone, then who was he working with? Who else wanted President Kennedy dead?
The Russians had motive. The anti-Castro Cubans had motives. The right-wingers in the South had motive. Sure, Castro had motive.
The Kennedy administration was trying to undermine Fidel Castro's Cuban dictatorship.
It is clear that the forces of communism are not to be underestimated in Cuba or anywhere else in the world.
Mark Lane believes the CIA killed Kennedy.
One motorcycle cop went up to grassy knoll. He confronted a person behind the fence, and the man had Secret Service credentials. Let's remember, the CIA created all the Secret Service credentials.
Gary Cornwell offers a different opinion.
The strongest case was mafia complicity. The committee was saying, when we take all the evidence about the mafia, we can't discount the possibility that individual members did not have a role in the assassination.
Is there new evidence linking organized crime to the assassination? And later, why one man insists the clues to solving the president's murder are near the nation's capital. Could science rewrite history?